Well, my next guest has been involved in Southern rock and then made a transition in his life to discover the Rock of Ages, Jesus Christ. I'm talking about Jason Fowler, and we are so delighted to have this very gifted musician and musical artist with us. Jason, welcome. First time 100 Huntley Street.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
We are thrilled to have you here. Your story is so compelling. Your life, you had a loving family, but there were addictions in the family.
There were addictions.
And at age 15, you began to drink. Tell us a little bit about that journey, and we're going to talk about where you are today, but let's go back to those origins of the struggle in your life.
Well, my dad he'd struggled with alcohol, and thank God he's been sober over 20 years today. But when I was younger, I guess I was 15 years old, I decided to try drinking for the first time. And I said, before then, I said, I'm never going to drink. I've seen the effects of it. I don't want to have that in my life. But a friend of mine said, hey, would you like to go and hang out with my older brother and I, and maybe have a beer? And all I heard was, at that time, being an adolescent, do you want to go and hang out and be cool? And so I did. I took a drink the first time, and it changed everything, because what it did for me is it kind of killed the fear inside. I guess it gave me liquid courage.
Okay.
In a way. I felt like I was smarter, better looking, and but I actually got in trouble the first time that I drank, and then I got sick as well. But I said, I'm going to do that again, because it took the fear away from me in my life. And now, I had always been raised in a Christian home, and we went to church every Sunday, and around that time is when I started to get away from church, and started playing guitar around that time. I bought my first guitar at 16 years old.
So you started drinking at 15 and picked up your first guitar at 16, or at least owned your first guitar at 16. How old were you when you got in your first band, where you could really call it a band?
I would say 19. And
Start getting paid a little bit at that point?
yeah, we played skating rinks.
Yeah.
And little gigs like that. And so from there, I actually got in a band called Dirt Circus, and we played around the Southeast United States at fraternities and sororities.
So what happened then on the journey? Musically, you were on the incline, but did you feel spiritually and physically, because of drink, that things were on the inside, on the decline?
Well, I started using drugs too as well.
What kind of drugs were you using?
Well, it started out with pot, marijuana,
Right.
and then it moved on to other things. When you're playing in a rock and roll band, it's kind of accepted. You know?
It's the drug of entry, isn't it?
Yeah, and alcohol was always on the table, but for me, it was whatever would change the way that I felt. And remember, I started drinking since I was 15, and,
Wow.
and so I'd learned a lot of things in my life with that liquid courage, and started to get a false sense of spirituality
Okay.
in my life. Started playing around and doing everything that comes with rock and roll, with relationships. I mean, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
And it goes from there. I actually got kicked out of that band for drinking. And in a rock and roll band, it's kind of difficult to get kicked out of a band for drinking.
That's very true. So it was causing you, I'm guessing you couldn't perform at the level they needed. Maybe you weren't showing up on time, or rehearsals were not on time. And so that band says bye-bye.
Yeah, my level of drinking and partying was a little bit more than theirs. And they said, we can't handle this.
So where did you head to next? Because you love the music, but you are addicted now, and you're in a hole.
I was in a hole, and I developed performance-based acceptance. The more I did good or well, and the more awards I got, the better I felt about myself. I got affirmation from my family, and you're doing a great job.
Plus, you get it from an audience when
absolutely
you're playing.
And so that took over as well. And when I got kicked out of the band, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to start 2 bands, and I'm gonna get a record deal, and that is gonna make me feel good inside. If I get a record deal, everything's gonna be fine. So I started a band called Ultraphonic, and another band, but Ultraphonic went on to record several records with a gentleman named Brian Holmes from the Producers, and they were one of the first bands on MTV. But he was a great guy, and once we recorded several albums, we put one of the songs on the internet, and there's a .com called GarageBand.com.
Okay.
And people would vote. They would take 2 months worth of voting, and whoever won got a $250,000 record deal. And we won.
Wow.
We won. We went into Muscle Shoals. Now, keep in mind,
Muscle Shoals, on those famous places in all the world for the who's of musicians to go and record. For you, you're now at that level, but inwardly there's still something wrong and there's no peace. Somewhere along the way of this amazing life that's up professionally and down personally, I guess you hit some kind of bottom or some point where you realize there's a need for the Lord in your life.
well, I always felt a need for the Lord, but I had a false sense of it. I was trying to do it on my own. I was trying to fill up the inside of me with everything of the world to make me feel good. And I realized today that it's designed for Jesus. He's the one that fits perfectly in our heart.
Beautiful.
And I was filling it up with all these things that were actually blocking me off from His love. And well, I wouldn't say blocking me off from His love, because He loves us no matter what. He never left me. I left Him. But I was trying to do it all on my own with a drug and alcohol habit. At that time, my family was having turmoil. The consequences of drinking and using drugs had really caused so much pain in my life. And I was trying to internalize it. And by this time, my dad had been sober, and he understood that I really needed to reach a place where I could change, and I was willing to change. The record label ended up selling out after we recorded the record to Microsoft. They were going around and buying different internet companies at the time, and the record was shelved. I was left there. I thought that when I got the record deal that I was going to be okay. Yeah. I thought that everything was going to be fine, but
and then that fell out from under you.
It fell out from under me, and my relationships were in shambles. My relationship with God was
When
in
did you come to that determination that you had to turn to Him in a new and in a different way than you had before?
For me, I had to hit rock bottom. I got to a place where I was homeless, and I had nowhere to go, and I had alienated everything in my life. I was kicked out of a drug dealer's house after being homeless, and it was raining outside, and I was crying, and I just didn't know where to go and who to go to. But I said, God, whoever you are, whatever you are, please help me. I cannot do this anymore. And about 3 weeks later, I was in a rehab facility in Athens, Georgia. And it really was the beginning of the most amazing life change in my whole entire life.
So Christ became central to your life in a very personal way.
He did. I asked for help. I knocked on the door, and He opened it.
As He said He would.
He never left me.
You later went into Celebrate Recovery formats, and that was a way that you transitioned from rock and roller to a worship leader. Am I correct?
Absolutely. About 6 months into the recovery program, it was a Celebrate Recovery. I accepted Jesus in my heart at a men's conference, and I really started to get better. I tell people it's like a country song backwards, because I started getting a relationship with my family, started getting a relationship with my friends, myself. I liked who I was.
Yeah.
I started seeing who I could become through Him, and most of all, I got a relationship with Jesus. So I came back. And at that point, too, I realized, wow, I prayed and asked God to help me, and He did. And so when I came back, I stayed up in Athens for about a year, and when I came back, I moved back home, and I searched for a home church and found a home church, and went up to them and after one service and said, hey, I play a little music, and I would really like to maybe try out for the band. I felt it in my heart. My grandmother has a saying, and she says, God's gift to you is your talent, and what you do with it is your gift back to God.
That's good.
And so I started really feeling the need inside to use that talent to help others. And with the Celebrate Recovery, I started to get a feeling of, one of the parts of Celebrate Recovery is actually a house cleaning, okay? Learning to trust God first, and these 12 steps coming out of the Beatitudes of Jesus. But I had to get that stuff outside of me. I had to admit that I was wrong in some situations, take an inventory, and go and make amends to people. And once I did that, it lifted a lot of things outside of me, and Jesus started pouring back in. And my wife says to me, she said, look, you've been playing music for a long time, but if you're playing music for anything other than God, you're just making a bunch of noise. And that's the way I started feeling. So I joined the praise team and started leading worship at Celebrate Recovery. Next thing I know, I started a church in downtown Atlanta.
Tell us about the church, the name of it.
Refuge City Church. And we wanted to be on the front line of helping others. We wanted to be on the front line of, there's a lot of people struggling with addictions. Yeah. There's a lot of people struggling with everything from prostitution to addictions to just basic relationships.
I don't know what time of day you're watching this or where you may be, but Jesus Christ can change lives. He can change your life. No matter how low, how down you may be, He specializes in loving people just like you. There's a prayer line on the screen there, and I wish that you would call it. Jason does too. It's maybe your hour, your moment, your second of desperation. And before you do something that you shouldn't do, why not do something that you can do? Get a phone and call. It's toll-free. And speak to a loving, caring person, a prayer partner at the end of that line, who would love to share with you what Jason discovered years ago, that Jesus Christ can change your life. You can begin again. Call us. Jason, it's a great story of redemption, and I'm so glad that you're resting on that Rock of Ages today.
Absolutely.
Jason Fowler, call us at the prayer line, would you?